Welcome, everybody, to the Inner Carnivore Podcast. I have a very special guest today, Christine Trimpe. Before I get into it with her, whether you guys are listening to this on iTunes, Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, or watching the whole video on YouTube, do a huge favor. Like the show, subscribe, send it to a friend. I appreciate it each and every time that you guys do that. Now, getting into my guest, who is an author, a speaker, coach, and has an amazing transformation of your own. How are you doing, Christine?
I'm great. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm overjoyed to be here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And before we get into your journey, because I have read on it a little bit, and I would love to get into that. The last time we talked, you do have a book coming out in the near future. Talk to me real quick about your book coming.
Yes, well, the scheduled date, I'm so excited. It has been a 5-year work in process. October 15th is the intended release date for SugarFreed. Stop losing your weight loss battle, start gaining your victory.
Awesome. And I cannot wait to get into what all that entails, because I know your coaching program kind of coincides with that.
Absolutely.
But back to your story. Like, you have a great story.
Mm.
Where did this all start for you?
Well, let's back up to my childhood just real briefly. I was a chubby kid, so I have battled with my weight pretty much my entire life. I was a little bit thinner in high school, but I had been teased and bullied as a kid when I was chubby, so I'd always carried like this extra weight, the emotional weight with me for so many years. And I tried to lose weight over and over again, the typical yo-yo dieting cycle for my entire adult life. I really started gaining the weight when I was a college student, the typical freshman 15. I came home from college my freshman year and I had gained 40 pounds. So at that time in my life, between the ages of 18 and 19 is really when I can look back and see like my struggle with what I now know as insulin resistance began. So for 30 years, I struggled and I tried to do my very best to get control of my weight situation. And I followed the dietary mantras that I was taught in programs like Weight Watchers and medical weight loss centers and all of that, eat less, move more, everything in moderation. And I I would lose weight and I would gain it back. And despite me even trying to eat as healthy as I could, the things that I was still including in my diet were just contributing to my insulin resistance. One time I did a liquid protein shake diet for 10 months. That's all I ate for 10 months with 5 shakes a day, 800 calories, strict calorie restriction. Now, when I look back on the ingredient labels of those protein shakes, I see that they're full of sugar. But I did lose quite a bit of weight on that. But as soon as they switched me into whole foods maintenance, I was given permission to eat things like a half of a baked potato. And if I was going to eat pasta, make sure it was whole wheat pasta, eat whole wheat bread. And as soon as I started reintroducing those foods, the weight started coming back on. And it completely destroyed me. It crushed me. I was like, I just spent 10 months in severe deprivation, but I adhered to it. I never cheated. I'm a pretty resilient person, so I try to, I'm a rule follower. Did all the things, and that was right before I turned age 40. So I gained all that weight back going into my 40s. I gained all that weight back plus some. And then I finally reached a turning point moment shortly before I was about to turn 50. There's always something significant about new decades. I don't know if you've heard that from any of your other guests, but especially for women, like, oh, we're approaching another decade. So I was approaching my 50s and I was at my highest weight ever in June 2015 when my daughter graduated from high school. I remember specifically the day stepping on the scale of the day of her high school graduation. For whatever reason, I was trying to count my calories. I was a member of Planet Fitness at the time. I was trying to do all the right things. And I was so frustrated because I stepped on the scale and was at the highest point I'd ever seen flashing back on a scale. And I was 230 pounds at the time. And being only 5'1", that is pretty significant morbid obesity. So that was around the time in my life then, approaching 50, I started thinking like I started to begin feeling a little bit hopeless, to be honest. Like, am I meant to be fat? And shortly after that high school graduation time, I went on a 25th anniversary trip with my husband to Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. And he wanted to climb up to a lake called Nymph Lake. And I thought I could do it because looking at the trailhead marker, it was only a mile. And I thought I could walk a mile, but it was a significant change in elevation. And I didn't get very far up the trail before I was gasping in air and told my husband to go on without me. And so in that moment, that is my turning point moment, JT. That is when I sat on the side of a stump. I sat on the side of the trail on a stump and really just was feeling quite miserable, chastising myself, knowing, because I had, grown up being bullied for my weight, just knowing that the hikers, those fit and healthy hikers that were passing by me, they were chastising me too. In my mind, I knew the conversations they were having. And I just remember like just praying in that moment, like I just wanted to feel better. I just wanted to feel better. At that point, I never imagined that I could live at a healthy weight. I just wanted to feel better so that I could start being more active in life and getting off the sidelines, because I felt like I was such a letdown to my husband in that moment and a letdown to myself, because here was a mile-long hike that I couldn't even climb. And my heart, it wanted to climb, but I just couldn't go another step, figuratively and literally. So that's where my health turning point story begins.
So it's so common that these people go back and forth, right? And then they have a moment, like you said, it's like an aha moment of, oh my God, I need to change something.
Mm-hmm.
And mine was never that bad, but for me, it was an anniversary trip in Vegas where I was like, I don't feel right. I don't like the way I look. I don't feel very good. Like, okay, I'm going to change something when we get back. So, and it just illustrates you talking about the Weight Watchers and the shakes and the reduced calories. Like, it just illustrates the information that's out there, right? You go on social media, you go on websites, whatever it is, and people will just say restrict your calories, right? As long as you are in a calorie deficit, you're fine. I'm like, that's okay, cool. Like, sure, if you restrict enough, you can lose weight, right? Like, there's no, you just have to go to impoverished countries to know that. Guess what? They talk about restrictive diets. Guess what's a restrictive diet? Having to restrict your calories for your entire life, because the moment you stop that restriction,
Right.
it just all comes flooding back. And
Yeah.
so when you have this moment, you're like, all right, I got to change something.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you go from there? How did you get different information from all of the stuff that you had tried prior?
Right. Well, the first thing I thought of was like, something has to change. And another thing, God bless my husband. I was like, I'm from Michigan. I live in Michigan, and we were in an elevated mountain area. And apparently that exasperated my snoring. I had a undiagnosed sleep apnea at the time. And he just like very kindly said, your snoring is like out of control here. And I felt really bad about that too, because he wasn't able to get good sleep on our vacation. So I came home from that trip with a brand new resolve to finally do something about my health. And the first thing I did on that Monday morning was I called the sleep study doctor of my local hospital, something I had put off for 10 years, because I knew I was going to be coming home with a CPAP machine, and I didn't want to do that. That sounded miserable to me. But I knew, again, like something deep down in my heart knew something had to change. So I had that sleep study. I came home with a CPAP machine, and that it sounds like, I know people don't like to use CPAP machines, but I really believe 100% that CPAP machine changed my life. It put me on the right trajectory of getting better sleep and waking up refreshed. And so my story kind of took off from there. The next thing that began happening was my decades of obesity and my insulin resistance, and I was diagnosed pre-diabetes. I began having really painful ovarian cyst, and which had happened off and on throughout the years when I was morbidly obese. I'm pretty sure, like when I was younger, I'm pretty sure if PCOS had been a thing, I would have been diagnosed with it. But I'm 57 now, so it wasn't really discussed that much when I was in my 20s and early 30s. So I was having these painful ovarian cysts, and the doctor ordered an ultrasound. And from the abdominal ultrasound, I was also told that I had fatty liver disease. And that's kind of the thing that scared me straight. Like the obstructive sleep apnea was a pain. Having to use a CPAP machine, that just sounded like not that fun. But getting the diagnosis of the fatty liver disease scared me straight and really sent me down a rabbit hole of trying to figure out how in the world my liver got loaded with fat when I was eating low fat for 30 years. How did that happen? That was my big question.
And where did you find the most information? Right? Like, because this is the other problem is where do you find your information? Because I can go, you would think, like your first thought would be a registered dietitian.
Right.
But I can go to 10 different registered dietitians that all tell me something different. So then I'm like, okay, what about an MD? And then I can go to 10 different MDs that all tell me something different. And like at the end of the day, you're like, what do I even do? And you honestly, you end up finding somebody that started where you did and got the results. And you're like, okay, how did you do that? Like, you tell me how you did that because I'm not listening to any.
Yeah, exactly. My doctor that diagnosed the ovarian cyst was a gynecologist, so she wasn't really that interested in my liver disease. And in her defense, she knew my liver was full of fat because I was over 100 pounds overweight. So she kind of poo-pooed it, but she said, we'll just keep an eye on it. But like, again, I said that like really concerned me because I did Google it when I got home, and I learned that, the fatty liver disease can turn into NASH, and the NASH can turn into cirrhosis of the liver. And that's beyond, like, there's no repair beyond that. So I just started Googling, and I learned, unfortunately, I didn't bookmark it, but this is something that really changed my life, is that I learned that my liver was full of fat because of sugar, and that it was the sugar that was the problem. And sugar was a major hormone disruptor. And it was just like this big light bulb moment. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't jump in right away and say, okay, I'm going to quit sugar today. Because by this time it was the end of December, beginning of January 2016. It took me a couple months to wrap my brain around the fact that I needed to begin ditching all sugar from my life. I hadn't heard about keto at that time. I had never heard about low carb. I never heard about intermittent fasting. What I did land on was a woman who wrote a book called I Quit Sugar. And I thought, that's what I need to do. I need to quit sugar. I can do this. And so I made a decision on March 10th, 2016, that I was going to quit sugar. On that day, I quit coffee cold turkey because I was having a little bit of coffee with a whole lot of flavored creamer. And that's how I was starting my day. So that was my first step to quitting sugar.
And was it smooth? Right? Did you have like big withdrawals? Like how did that process go for you?
Yeah, I did it. Fortunately, I did it step by step. So I didn't suffer too much. I did have a caffeine withdrawal headache for a couple of days, but once I realized that I got past that, like within 4 or 5 days, then I determined that the next thing I was going to do, I worked in a corporate office at the time. The next thing I was going to do was I swore off candy. No longer going to eat the candy that's sitting all over my office. And then after that, I decided I'm not going to participate in the weekly birthday celebrations that we have in the office. Somebody was always having a birthday. There was always cake, something. And then I began avoiding the coffee break room at the office because I was always loaded with stuff. Our office was in a Kroger plaza. So people are always going down to the Kroger bakery and getting the next day baked goods and leaving them in the coffee room. So I just began step by step swearing off of all of that. And then I started reading labels, factory labels, and I wouldn't eat anything that had sugar added to it. And so on. I did that. Within probably about a 6-week period, I realized I was no longer having sugar cravings. And it was kind of really, well, it wasn't kind of, it was definitely freeing. I also was not having my daily headaches. I noticed that my skin was clearing up. But for a 10-month period, not eating sugar, which was basically the white stuff and factory foods like taco shells, sauces with sugar added to it. I wasn't eating those anymore, but I was still eating bread, potato, and pasta and rice, because at that point I hadn't learned about the keto lifestyle or anything. So from March 2016 through January 2017, January 13th, 2017 to be exact, the day I learned about keto, because I was frustrated with my slow weight loss, I only lost about 20 pounds during that 10-month period. And I felt like I had been sacrificing, like I've been clean. I'm following this I quit sugar journey and still not losing a lot of weight. Even though I was feeling better, I was still frustrated by the slow weight loss. So having a conversation with a friend, she asked me, she loved to talk about hormones, this friend, and she asked me, have you ever heard of Dr. Jason Fung? And I was like, no. She's like, have you ever heard of intermittent fasting? There's this doctor in Toronto and he's talking about hormones and fasting and like, and I was like, oh, okay. So over that lunch that we had was steak, potatoes, and bread. And that was the last time I ate bread and potatoes, because that night I went home and I Googled hormones and fasting and Dr. Fung's name. And I ended up, the top hit was his 5 video series that he had posted on the Diet Doctor website. The first video is titled, What is Fasting? And I was immediately captured by what he had to say. He was speaking to, like, he had put these videos out there specifically for me. I was like, sign me up. This sounds exactly like me, because he explained how the carbohydrates, I was addicted to them. I was still eating them, craving the potatoes, the pasta. Those are the things that I was still eating. And I just knew that this was my way out. I just knew deep down in my heart that I had just stumbled on the best bit of information that I had ever been given. Never considered going to an RD like you suggested, because, like I said, my doctor kind of poo-pooed it, and I just tried to Google my way. Dr. Google is really what transformed my health. Dr. Google.
It's so true. Like, the amount of information that you can access, right? Like we have this technological period where you have access to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten into it a couple times because in my videos I like to pick on RDs, because they are supposedly, like, they're supposed to be the epitome of knowledge and education in the nutrition space. And you have these RDs like promoting carbohydrates and sugar and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now if you're healthy, you can get away with it, right? Like there's certain things you can do once you're metabolically healthy. But for the average person, especially the person who's going to them for advice, like, healthy people don't typically go to doctors for advice, right? It's just not what we do.
Right.
But the people who are, like, that's not the information that they need to find. And you force people to go to Google. And that's how you end up with people doing all sorts of crazy stuff, because the doctors that they're supposed to go to don't give them the information correct.
Right. My friends and family kind of thought I was a little wacky when I started sharing about the dramatic weight loss that I began experiencing as soon as I quit bread, potato, pasta. So I was basically still eating the savory carbohydrates, no sugar, no white stuff, no sweet stuff. And I'll tell you a funny story about RDs. At the time, I worked for a physician organization, and part of our organization, we trained and had diabetes counselors. And we were involved in the diabetes prevention program that was developed by the ADA, American Diabetes Association. So because my HbA1c was, borderline concerning, I qualified for this DPP program. And so I was in the program. I was not eating sugar at the time, but I was still eating. Well, another thing I was still eating was oatmeal, because I was starting my day with their suggestion of oatmeal and blueberries and brown rice syrup, which I thought was a healthier sugar at the time, right? So I was eating that every day. Now that's how I'm starting my day, is with oatmeal. And they're telling me to eat breakfast. I was never hungry in the morning, so I'm eating this big bowl of oatmeal, starting my day that way. And I was in that program when I discovered keto, and I decided to keep it a secret. And then, don't you know that I was the only person that began losing weight in that DPP program? But I had a secret. I had a well kept secret. And when it came time to wrap up that program, I had lost quite a bit of weight by that time. And they were all like, "We've never had anybody lose this much weight in this program." And that's when I dropped the bomb on them and told them that I had not been following their program at all, because I completely ditched all carbohydrate, or, I went very low carb, 20 grams of carbs a day or less. And you should have seen that RD's jaw hit the floor. I mean, she literally was like, and I'm like, don't use my results. Don't report that to the DPP program, because this would not be accurate and does not support their program at all. So that's a little bit of a funny story that I have about RDs.
But the funny part about that is they won't actually take that and go further with it, right?
No.
They won't go, wait a minute, why are these people getting results
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't? So, like, you would think, right? Because they'll chalk it up to anecdotal, right? It's just
Right.
anecdotal. They reduce their calories more than we told them to, so that's why.
Right.
But I'm like, okay, so, and the ADA, like, I don't know if you follow him on Twitter. Ryan Attar is a naturopathic doctor who's a type 1 diabetic.
Okay.
And he has a diabetes clinic. And so he helps people do low carb with diabetes and helps thousands of people. And I've had him on my show quite a while ago.
Okay.
And he will constantly post what the ADA will do, including recipes, right? The ADA recipes. And you're like, even if it would be one thing if they were just the carbohydrates that you were talking about, right? Like the natural ones. So these are added sugar recipes that they'll post. And you're like, what on earth are we doing when that is the pinnacle? That is supposed to be the highest level of diabetes education in our country. And they are promoting this way that is obviously not helping. Like, just look at obesity rates and diabetic rates in this country, and whatever we're doing is not helping. Why do you think there's so resistance to try and go low carb or keto, which has been around forever? Like, keto is not new. People call it a fad diet. I'm like, keto's been around since the early 1900s. Like, let's not pretend. I mean, you could even go further back if you want to talk about human history. Why are they so resistant to it?
Yeah, I wish I knew the answer to that, because they continue to do that DPP program in the company I used to work for. And I'm sure they're still doing it today. One of my most active tweets recently was when I responded to that Stacy. I think she's an upper level person at the ADA, and she was sharing a recipe, and it went pretty viral. Like, we were all responding to it on Twitter. And I said, "Stacy, I would love to share with you my experience in the DPP. Like, I really honestly want to have a heart talk with you about this." But of course I didn't get a response to that. But yeah, I don't like to call myself a conspiracy theorist. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I really think, like, it really does make you think, for sure. Like, what is going on? And I think, like with everything, it all comes around to the almighty dollar, and like, how much more can we hold on to that? Yeah, it's sad. It's so sad, because wow, if people would just come in and engage with us in the low carb community on Twitter, they would, like, a whole brand new world would be opened to health and healing and wellness, and just being set free from all these diseases that can be managed with proper food, eating well,
Well,
and
and
not eating all day long, right?
right.
Yeah, yeah.
That's part of the crazy thing is,
Mhm.
so I'm a little more of the what people would consider right wing conspiracy when it comes to carnivore, right? Like, carnivore is like out there,
Yes, right.
but carnivore it's pretty similar to keto, right? Like,
Mhm.
it has the same general principles for the most part. But people will so people will say the anecdotal stuff. Like, well, it's carnivore's anecdotal. There's no studies. There's no studies. There's lots of studies on keto and diabetics and blood sugar and weight loss and all of these things. And I think you hit it on the head with the dollar. It's a drug thing. Like, go take a look at insulin manufacturers. Go take a look at Ozempic, right? Weight loss drugs, all of this stuff. Ozempic basically is to treat your diabetes, right? It controls your blood sugar and your insulin and helps you lose weight. Why not just use diet?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because diet doesn't make you any
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And nobody makes money off of fasting either, right? We're not eating, we're not doing anything. And fasting was a super powerful tool for my weight loss. It just set me free from, like, one of the dietary dogmas that led me down a path of despair for so many years was the everything in moderation. And me, as a recovering food and sugar addict, like, everything in moderation kind of gave me permission to eat things that were only worsening my insulin resistance, even if it was only occasionally. I was pretty good. Like, I wouldn't eat dessert every night, but I would indulge in a dessert if I was out to dinner with my friends or my family. And so everything in moderation, I would try to, like, maybe just eat a portion of that dessert. But once you started, you can't stop when you're, someone that is food or sugar addicted like I was. So everything in moderation, I think, is the worst possible advice you could give to somebody who may be battling with a food addiction or a carb addiction or sugar addiction. And complete abstinence is the way to go if you struggle with that. So yeah, there's so many dietary dogmas out there that just lead us all astray and lead us down the wrong path. That's for sure.
What do you say to someone when they tell you that sugar addiction's not real? Right? Because that's the other thing I see all the time is you're not actually, and then they'll go, if you were addicted to sugar, you would be eating pure white table sugar with a spoon out of that.
Right. Well, I try to steer the conversation to how food manufacturers, they make this food to be hyper palatable and to keep us coming back for more. And like, some people will, when I say things like it's hyper palatable, they might stop and think, like, oh yeah, you're right. Like, and then, like, what about those old Lay's commercials? You can't just eat one chip, right? And I just try to have a conversation like that. And then, like, and for me, like, physiologically, my brain, every time my blood sugar would crash, my brain was telling me, feed me, feed me. I need fuel. I need quick fuel. I need more sugar for fuel. And the people that are not going to accept this way of eating or this lifestyle, or accept our amazing N=1 stories, they're going to try to push back at every opportunity. But thank God that there is so many people that are open and receptive to making these changes, to understanding the brain physiological responses to carbohydrates and sugars. And also psychologically, for me, I was an emotional eater as well. I have healed so much through the emotional part of this journey as well, too, which has also set me free from the sugar and the carb addiction. So understanding how it all connects together, the physical, the physiological, the emotions, the mind, and also for me as a Christian, huge spiritual impact too. I 100% believe we're created holistically. And if people are open up enough to, like, see how it all goes together, physical, emotional, and spiritual, that's where the healing comes in. And it's very encouraging to see people that will come along and say, like, oh, look what they're doing. Look what Christine has done. Look what JT's done. Maybe there's something to that. And I see people coming around more and more, don't you?
Yeah, no, it's definitely gaining traction, right? There wouldn't be so many people outspoken on it if it wasn't.
Right. Yeah.
So I have a super interesting question for you.
Okay.
As someone who also believes that we were created, and 99.9% of my arguments, I'm like, you can do either way. Like, do you think we evolved, or do you think we created? We can still, like, come to the same conclusion. But as someone that believes we were created, what do you say? Because I've heard this several times. When we were created and there's talk of eating things like fruit and honey,
Mm.
and how you apply that to modern.
Oh, I think that food has been modernized way too much, for sure. And it's just the fruit, modern fruit is made to be sweeter. It's been, crafted to be sweeter. Also with fruit, the our very, very, very early ancestors didn't have the opportunity to eat fruit a lot. So like they would get it during a very short season of period. And here we've got all of this fruit that's been modified uh, to have possibly like more damaging effects from the amount of sugar, amount of fructose that's in it. And then just the way that we've like morphed into this westernized diet of factory foods, even just, maybe our grandparents' generation or great grandparents' generation, they were still eating a more whole food diet, and you didn't see an obesity epidemic. So you know that there's been way too much modernization to our food source. And so things have changed drastically. And then that's why I encourage my coaching clients to, get back to the shopping the perimeter of the grocery store. And I personally eat fruit in moderation during my weight loss journey. I only ate berries occasionally. And now I will eat them occasionally still, like in a yogurt parfait or something. But I don't think for myself someone as being very as insulin resistant as I was and how I had to battle to reverse all that. I'm not interested in going back to where I was before. And again, as a recovering carb addict, I can handle a little bit of fruit, but I don't want to set myself up to like making it part of my day every day to begin having to have that sweet hit all the time. So, yeah, the modernization of our food source. I mean, I think that's the culprit and has done us so disservice.
I love that answer. The answer I give is I call it the bastardization of
Yes.
fruit, right? Like,
Yeah.
because it's true. You take a look at, dissections of fruit and how they used to be, like bananas especially.
Yes.
And it's like the sugar content is so much higher because we've genetically modified.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And people will use the same. They're like, oh, well, we've selectively bred cattle, and I'm like, that's a little bit different. But yeah, I believe the same thing. I don't think that, because I get that especially because they're like, well, we're not carnivores, we're omnivores. And I never said we weren't. Like I do believe that, but I also believe that we can no longer eat the stuff we used to because A, it's available all the time. Right?
Yes.
Like you didn't have people eating the same fruit all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's so readily available in such ridiculous quantities. And you naturally had to kind of do intermittent fasting because you just didn't have food all day, every day. Like it wasn't feasible to just have food like that. And so I absolutely agree. And we didn't have the health conditions, right? Like we didn't have the insulin resistance. Like, I'm
Yes.
sure there was some, but on a large scale, it just wasn't the same. And so I absolutely agree that, yeah, I think most people can handle it. But the problem is you have all of these issues that you're trying to overcome, and just the inclusion of some of it can oftentimes do it's that eat moderation.
Right. 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 Yeah, another thing is that we live more sedentary lifestyles too. I mean, let's just be honest, a lot of us have day jobs, desk jobs. And so that's what we're doing. And our ancestors were much more active. Obviously, they had to hunt and gather their own food and work the farms and all of that stuff. So, and I do not believe that the bananas that I ate, like my fruit of choice when I was overweight or obese was bananas. I don't believe bananas made me fat, but it definitely wasn't helping me. And it definitely helped me to eliminate those from my lifestyle, so that I could, find a healthy balance in living a better, much healthier lifestyle in my physical health, emotional health, and my spiritual health. So biblically, like people do bring that up, as a Bible person who's reading her Bible all the time and like taste and see the Lord is good and talking about the honey from the rock and all of that. It's like, yes, I get what you're saying, but God also has, I call it God's good smorgasbord. Like he also has all these other options for us too. And he doesn't say, like eat this, do this, do this, do that. I'm more like what I have learned in this journey is learning how to crave well, learning how to choose well, so that I could care well for my body, so that, I can serve. What I love doing, JT, is I love serving women. And it's just my daily delight now. And I always say to my coaching clients, because I want them to be little servers too, I always say, when we feel better, we serve better. And I don't know about you, but I want to wake up every day and I feel better. I feel way better than I ever did in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. I feel like I'm an 18-year-old in a 57-year-old body. Well, no, my body doesn't feel like a 57-year-old. You know what I'm trying to say. I just feel so much better now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And people have such a hard time believing that I eat this way because I feel better.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel better. And
Right.
that's the same thing. So I was animal based for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had fruit in my diet. And I finally decided to kick it, and not for any reason, right? Like I was like, it's fine. I feel fine. I feel good,
Mm-hmm.
but I wonder what would happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I kicked it and I felt better. And I was like, this is exactly so this is why I stick the way that I do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, jumping in a couple more. I know we have a hard stop coming up. What does your coaching program look like, and what are the typical types of clients that you deal with, and kind of the programs that you
Yes. My program attracts women just like me who tried all the things and continually make their best efforts and go on this yo-yo dieting again, get frustrated, start feeling the guilt and shame piling up over and over again. So it's called the SugarFreed Me weight loss solution because my main passion for them, as far as their dietary choices goes, is to get off the sugar, like the sweet stuff first. And it is a step-by-step approach. We get off the sweet stuff first, then we go to the starches and the grains, do that. But what I didn't incorporate into my weight loss efforts, all those 30 years that I was unsuccessful, was personally, I never thought that God cared about how I cared about my health. But I've learned something so much different in this journey that I've been on, this health and healing journey. Like I mentioned, my spiritual health has changed drastically as well. So I again, it's holistic. I believe that we were created holistically and that we need to heal holistically. And it's amazing to me when so many of my coaching clients who are, professing Christian women say, I never thought to do that. I never thought to put the three of them together because we all, for so many years, made the effort to check off the Weight Watchers points or keep a spreadsheet, track things in MyFitnessPal or whatever. We did all of those things, but it's amazing how many people who profess to be Christians are never invited or never included that part of their holistic being into feeling whole and healthy. So it's amazing to see these aha moments. And the best part of it is that coaching these women, it's like I've been there. I know where they're at. I know where they are and I know where they want to be. And so we just come together as a community, and it's wonderful to see them step into this freedom too. That's what the freed part, I hope everybody gets the freed part, is how quitting sugar has set me free, has been able to set others free so that they can live healthy in their body, mind, and spirit. So that's why I love to coach.
that's awesome. Do you find that there are people who do better just going cold turkey, right? Or have you found a better approach to the weaning off that you described?
I did find that most of my coaching clients have a better success if they do it step by step, but we can't drag it out. Like we have to be committed to within the first couple of weeks, we're going to get off. And then I do have, and I'm like, go you, because I do have some coaching clients that are like, they show up on their onboarding call and like, nope, today's the day. It's all or nothing. I'm like, okay, I'm here to support you. I can support you in that effort as well too. So, but I would say the majority of people are happy happier to do the little step-by-step over a couple week period. And the program is 13 weeks long. So within the first couple of weeks, we're getting off sugar, and then we're really digging in, and we begin with the emotional aspect too. But then we just really dig into every aspect of our holistic health, the physical health, the emotional, and the spiritual health. We just tie it all together. And it's just amazing to see these women like taking these steps and enjoying the freedom that I do every day too.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. So to respect the time, walk me through a little bit of the content of the book that you got coming up, and then where people can get more information, find more information about your coaching program.
Okay, great. Awesome. So the book, SugarFreed, Stop Losing Your Weight Loss Battle, Start Gaining Your Victory, includes a lot of my story, but it is a nonfiction book. It is designed to help people take that first step and the next step. And it's broken down into sections. Like the first section is resolve it, like I did on the side of that mountain. I resolved that I needed to do something about my health. And it shares my story as an encouragement. It gives them practical first steps that they can take once they've resolved it. And then the next section is restoring your physical health. So that's kind of more information on like what living a sugar-free, keto, low carb, carnivore lifestyle looks like for them. And then the next section is renewing your mind. So that I'm telling you, the emotional part of my weight loss journey was the most difficult. And there's a lot of hard work that needs to be done there. So we talk about renewing the mind. And then the final section is restoring or redeeming your spiritual walk. And then I end it with the end of my story when I reached my weight loss goals. I won't spoil the ending on what my husband said to me when he came back down that mountain after he got to the lake and I had been left sitting there. He told me something that just blew my mind. And so I just love to encourage women. I share it in my coaching program, like what the end of the story is. So that's kind of a tease, but the book and the coaching program work hand in hand. And I hope it's a great resource for women. Well, I know what the coaching program is because I'm seeing women show up every day and sharing their victory stories. So we need to stop losing these weight loss battles, ladies and gentlemen, any gentleman. I hope this encourages you as well too, and because we can gain the victory. It when we choose well, when we learn to crave well, we can bust the sugar cravings. When we do that and we begin to care well for our bodies, physical healing is available. And we do that by putting the right food in our mouth too. Yes.
Absolutely. Where can people find you, social media, and to get more information?
Okay. First stop would be my website, which is my name, Christine Trimpe, ChristineTrimpe.com. I have a page on my website about the weight loss program, and I have a page on my website about my speaking. I love to speak. I love to speak to audiences, Christian women's ministry audiences, and also general market audiences. I love to come and share a transformation story wherever I'm invited. So connect with me there. And then I'm all over social media. You can find me on Twitter. You just search my name anywhere, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. You will find me. I'm not very active on TikTok, but my name is reserved everywhere. But there's certain spaces that I'm not really showing up a whole lot.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
TikTok is my least favorite platform.
It kind of scares me, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I totally get that.
Yes.
Well, I really appreciate you being on. Everybody go give Christine a follow. I will tag you on the platforms that I post this on.
Yeah.
To everybody who listened in, thank you very much. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.